All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Christian Dating Game podcast. I believe this is episode 8 that has gone extremely quickly, to be quite honest, these eight episodes. I want to thank you for joining me today. I've got a really fun, different episode. As I said last time out, I'm going to be restructuring these. I'm not really going to be taking as many questions to start the show. Basically, I'm going to decide the topics from now on. And if you guys have questions, please use this as a Q&A. Please ask me these questions while you're here. But I've got a really great episode talking about whether or not you should date single mothers and how to actually vet Christian women to be your wife. Now, for everyone joining me, I can see people joining on various different platforms. A reminder that this is going live on Twitter, it's going live on Instagram, and it's going live on YouTube. And on all three of those platforms, you can get this. And if you find one of them a little bit awkward to watch on, feel free to go to one of my other platforms and you'll get the stream there. So the total viewers is based on all of those three different platforms: Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So yeah, today I've got a fun one. I'm really excited to share about this. I've been getting a lot of different uh, thoughts, feedback, and interest on people and hearing about this particular situation, and particularly about single moms, which is something that is really at the top of my mind for a couple of different reasons. One is I've had a client who basically got taken for a ride by a single mother and was really struggling with that situation before he reached out to me. And that was, really great. Well, not really great for him, but it's a really kind of great inspiration because I don't want other guys to go through this situation. And I was also asked a couple of questions about this as well. On my newsletter by a couple of different guys who were both asking about dating single mothers, and it's something that is often talked about in a bit of a strange way, in a bit of a weird way often, and it's something that I think bears us really deep delving into and kind of sharing about. Hey, what's good? Bo double D's on Instagram. Good to have you here. Thank you for joining me. And just a reminder, guys, please leave your comments. Please leave your questions. I want to make this as interactive as possible. This live stream, the Christian Dating Game podcast, is my chance to serve you. This is one of the ways that I try and serve my audience. My whole business is an act of service. It's my ministry, right? So this is a way that I can serve you for free and really help you guys out. So please leave comments. Please ask me questions. It can help drive the direction of the show. But yeah, so I was inspired by my client, basically. I don't want to give too many details, obviously, for confidentiality reasons. But he was basically he got married to a woman who was a single mom, and then to put a long story short, she left him and then went back to the father of her children. And she was a pretty manipulative woman, all told. And there's, things he could have done differently, of course. We always have to take some degree of responsibility for where we find ourselves in our relationships and our dating life. But he was really taken for a ride by this woman, and she was a single mother. Now, does the fact that she was a single mother mean that was the reason he was manipulated by her? And the simple answer for that is no. And for those of you who are interested, I'm drinking a Nicaraguan coffee today. It's okay. It's good. It's not great, to be quite honest. Roasted by a roaster in my city here in Indonesia, but it's okay. And basically, what you're really looking out for in single mothers, the warning signs about single mothers are the fact that, yes, she obviously has kids with another man. And yes, she is no longer with that man. So, what we really need to figure out when we are looking at an individual, and remember, whenever you're dating someone, you don't really want to categorize them as a single mother. You don't really want to categorize them as a Christian woman. You don't really want to categorize them in this way. You want to look at who they are as individuals. Okay. And those categorizations are ways for you to figure out who they are quicker. That's kind of the same for all red flags. Red flags are nothing to really worry about. Red flags are just a call to dig deeper. And in this case, you want to look at who is her character? Why is she a single mother? Is it that she made a bad judgment when she was, younger, 21, 22? Did she just make a mistake and, she now has a kid as a result of it? And I don't want to call any kid a mistake, but I just mean the fact that she wasn't looking to get pregnant at that time, and it just happened to happen in some circumstances. And then you have to weigh that against, like, was she a bad wife or a bad a bad partner for the father of the child, and that's what caused her to leave him? These are very different situations where you're both dealing with a single mother, but the reason why she is a single mother is very, very different. And it's a reminder that really, whether or not you should date a single mother or not, all comes down to your discernment. Okay, how discerning of a person are you, and can you figure out who this person is? Because just looking at one aspect of a woman's life, her character, and then using that to then either disregard her or take her on based on that one thing is the wrong attitude. We are looking to build a big picture of who this person is and whether we should go forward, because the intention of our dating, if you're a Christian man looking to date, the intention behind your dating is to one day marry this person. Okay, we want to marry her. We want to find out, is this woman going to be my wife? That is the purpose of our dating. Now, that doesn't mean you have to figure that out on the first date. That doesn't mean you have to go into every date with the outlook of like, are you going to be my wife? It's like, no, that's just the general, the general intention behind why we are dating someone. We're looking for it to lead to that in the end. We're not just looking to waste our time. We're not just looking for fun. We're not looking for sex. We're not looking for any of that. It's not just a way of, filling our time or making us feel good about ourselves or we're on a date. No, this is about actually finding someone to spend the rest of our lives with. We need to treat it in that way. And the only way you can do that is by looking at each person you're dating as an individual and as someone that you want to potentially one day marry. Now, for some of you guys watching this, or for some people at home, and for some of my clients, her being a single mother is an immediate disqualifier. And to be quite honest, I don't think that is the worst position you can take. It's up to you. I don't say you should do that, but I'm also not saying you shouldn't do that either. I'll be honest, if I was single again and, at my age and my stage of life and where I'm at, I probably wouldn't date a single mother. I don't think that's something that I would want to do personally. And a lot of times I hear a rhetoric in Christian circles of sometimes, and I've heard this from clients, of people who have kind of almost been bullied into dating single moms or to continuing with a single mother because she has kids. And therefore you as a father or you as a man should kind of create that fatherhood role for her kids. And this is something that I do disagree with. You should never be bullied into a relationship, full stop. And, I live in a very traditional society, and this is something you sometimes see and sometimes see glorified particularly on Twitter, more so than other platforms I'm on. But you'll sometimes see these traditional models kind of like, oh, the parents should decide who you marry. And I've had, again, clients who have gone for parental permission to go on a date with a woman before just, going on a date with her, which I wouldn't recommend either. You should get parental permission before you marry, but not before you date them. And these kind of outlooks are often glorified, but you, at the end of the day, are the person who's in the relationship, not your parents, not your pastor, not your friends, no one else, not your community. It's you and the woman that you're dating. You guys are the people who are in the relationship. So you guys have to be the ones who pick it. Okay. Not the other way around. Not other people deciding whether or not you do this. And I see this all the time in the society I live in, just failed, terrible marriages because people, they didn't really choose to be in that marriage. It was based on kind of pressure or, parents kind of picking things for people. And, when you actually live in a society where that happens, you see it doesn't actually work very well. And there's a reason for that. It comes down to individual agency and individual sovereignty. And ultimately, your relationship is between you and the woman. It's not between you and the relationship for her children. Okay. You should never be in a relationship with someone because of their children. Okay. And again, I see this in Christian circles where guys are kind of almost bullied into continuing on with a woman because she's a single mother or pushing her in that way. And again, there's nothing wrong with this. There's a long history of men marrying widows, to take care of them. And they, you get something from that at that point. Or older men, for example, marrying a widow, which leads me to the next point. There's a historical precedent for this. And there's a reason why there's a historical precedent for men, older men, marrying widows, single mothers in that regard. That was what you'd historically call a single mother. It's a widow. It's less, I suppose there is a stigma attached, but it's a different kind of stigma. Although again, yeah, historically, your husband was more likely to die than you were to divorce him once upon a time. So there is that, I suppose. So why is that historically a precedent? Well, it's a very interesting situation that the reason why you get these dynamics of older men marrying younger single mothers is it actually comes down to one of the red pill's favorite concepts of sexual marketplace value. Now, sexual marketplace value is something that I very rarely talk about on any of my content, on my newsletter, on my Twitter feed. Basically, because it is riddled, I think I used this exact phrasing in one of my emails lately. It's drenched in the sweat of red pill losers, where, a lot of these red pill guys, they are basically losers and they just suck with women. They don't have a healthy response to women or life in general. They're manipulative. They're often dealing with their own pathologies. And they use their rationality to justify basically every immoral action. And this is the problem. I'm reading the Screwtape Letters at the moment by C.S. Lewis. And one of the things that really, talked to me in one of the letters that, for those of you who don't know, it's basically Screwtape Letters are basically a demon writing letters to one of his acolytes in trying to lure people away from Christianity. And one of the things that this demon encourages his acolyte to do is to lead men into reason. And as soon as you start getting them thinking in terms of logic about things, you're actually able to then lead them down a path. And just getting them into that frame of mind is enough that it will detach you from your intuition and your lived reality, right? Because you can make up any story in your brain, right? This is just the truth, and it will lead you away from the truth that is evident before you of God's reality. And that's what red pill guys do. And one of their ways they do this is through sexual marketplace value. But the actual concept of sexual marketplace value, which is basically that we have some kind of, inherent value to ourselves, that some men are more valuable than others, some women have more value to them than others. And it's about, a lot of dating is about, maximizing your sexual marketplace value so you can get better quality women. And there is a lot of truth to this concept. Just because they go on these logical stories and these, they create these fantasies in their brain, these red pill guys, doesn't mean that that concept doesn't hold weight. But I just generally don't talk about it because it's kind of laden in those terms. I prefer to talk about it in a way like this, where I can add the nuance, and all my clients get a real good understanding of this because I can really explain the nuances so they don't get lost in these bad paths. And again, guys, if you want to ask me any questions on this, if you want to ask me any questions, you want to lead the direction of this conversation, please feel free to leave comments. On Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram. If you're on YouTube and Twitter, I can put it up live on the stream. If you're on Instagram, I can't put it up live on the screen, I'm afraid, just because of the software, just because Instagram, actually. So the reason why widows date historically single mother, or older men historically would date single mothers, widows in that dynamic, is because of this concept of sexual marketplace value, where a woman who does have kids has a lot of risk associated with her, a different kind of risk compared to a woman without kids. And this risk, you've got to take care of her children. You're going to have another man involved in the relationship. You're going to have, she's going to have to prioritize her children, as she should, by the way. She's going to have less time to spend with you compared to a woman who doesn't. You are going to have to potentially pay for those kids in the future. There's all these things that come with that. And, there's going to be this dynamic of, shared time and all that kind of jazz that's going to be a different kind of dynamic to if she doesn't have kids. It's just reality. And that lessens her value. Now, this doesn't mean that she's valueless. This doesn't mean that you can just ignore everything about her and just kind of pass her off and shove her over because of that. It's about taking all these things together, because you can, to some degree, buy low with a single mother, where if she's a single mother who has good character, she's attractive, she's kind, she's a good mother, she does the best she can, that if you're an older guy, historically, as I say, I'm using the example of older men, you can't get the 22-year-old beautiful, woman. Again, I'm using this in a traditional context where people got married quicker, where, there was a push towards marriage and people would date for 3 months, then get married, and you couldn't have sex without marriage and all that jazz, which is something we should aspire to as Christians anyway. But I do have slightly alternate views on that, where, if you're not getting married in 3 months, which was the historical norm, you can't expect people to hold off from any sexual contact with this person they love for 2 years. It's just unrealistic. Doesn't mean you have to have penetrative sex, but that's another topic. I'm going off on tangents, as I do. But you can basically, by dating a single mother, you can almost punch above your weight. You can get a woman who's a better quality woman than you could perhaps normally get, because she has this aspect of her which does lessen her value. There is a relativity to that, and a relativity to value that means that, I can use an example. A friend of mine, or a guy I knew, was, he was like 40. He was not particularly in shape. He was not, not completely obese or anything, but he wasn't muscular. He had a decent job. He wasn't the smoothest guy. I think he'd only ever been in one relationship before, and he started dating a woman who was like 30. And she was very attractive, and she was kind, and she just had a kid with another guy when she was like 19 or 20, I think. The kid was probably like 10 or something. I forget exactly. And they have a great relationship. They're still together, and he probably couldn't have got a woman that good looking if she didn't already have a kid. Now, obviously, there's more to value than just looks, but that's part of it. For men, we care about that, and you should care about that. And this is something that can happen. Another of my clients, he was a 46-year-old guy. He'd been divorced, unfortunately. And he hadn't dated in 4 years. And he eventually, after working with me, he hadn't been on a date in 4 years. We got him getting consistent dates. And then one of the women he met was a 32-year-old who had a kid, again, about the same kind of age. Her husband had actually passed away. She was a legit widow. They weren't divorced. Again, which comes into this thing of evaluating their character, not their traits, where again, a single mother who has 3 kids from 3 different men is very different from a woman who is a single mother and her husband passed away, right? That's a very different situation. They're both single mothers, different circumstances, different people, different characters. So you must always be evaluating who they are as a person. And this is what we should be doing as Christians. We should always look below the surface. Okay, that doesn't mean we ignore these things or pretend they don't matter. Obviously, they do matter, right? The reason you're probably watching this is because it's something you care about, is whether she is a single mother and what that really means, right? That's probably one of the reasons you're watching this. It's not that you shouldn't care about it. It's just you shouldn't let that define her, and you should allow it to see who she really is and what her character really is, and be discerning in that. One of the values of having me by your side is I can help you discern those things quicker. To use the example that I kicked off this show, if my current client had been working with me when he met his now ex-wife, I believe they're divorced or in the process of getting divorced, who was the single mother, and she's took him for a complete ride, and she's very manipulative, I would have seen that very soon. He wouldn't have gone through that situation, and wasted years of his life. He lost half of his wealth he lost 50% of his income, not his income, his wealth. Because of that, they didn't have kids themselves, so he didn't have to pay any child support or anything. But that was, crippling for him financially. This is the risk of choosing the wrong woman. This is why you need to be able to vet. And she was a Christian, by the way. Just because they're a Christian doesn't mean they're a good person. Unfortunately, you've got to evaluate their character as an individual. Always. So in the same way that you shouldn't disregard women because they're single mothers, you shouldn't just take her on because she's Christian, right? There are different Christians, there are different people with different values and different character traits. And that's what's most important. Character is always king. Same for you. Your character is always going to be the most important thing also. I was talking about value before I went off on another tangent. Relative value is so important when it comes to dating. Because value is not a static concept. What really matters in dating is not how valuable you are, your actual inherent value. It's your relative value to the woman you're talking to. So a lot of the red pill, for example, techniques and kind of pickup artist techniques of, manipulating women essentially. Actually, when, for example, like not messaging back for a while, or like, kind of the qualifiers of kind of like being confrontational, kind of making her prove herself to you. Actually, the irony of those tactics is they are tactics that you should use when you're a lower relative value to the woman, which is an irony of the red pill. Yeah, and these guys are just generally not particularly valuable or attractive men, actually, which is why they have to resort to those tactics. Because that relative value requires you to try and get her to see you as higher value than you actually are. When you're a high value man, you actually need to be more accommodating. Again, it's a relative value. I'll give a great example. Okay, here's a good example of the concept of relative value. Have you ever seen any of these, like maybe leaked tweets or leaked messages from like a pop star or, like a movie star, when they're like talking to women, and sometimes these women are a bit younger than them, and, you sometimes see them come up on Twitter or online where they have leaked tweets from, some actor messaging some, 20-year-old woman. And whenever you see them, the guy comes across like so kind of like lame, where he's like using a lot of emojis, and he's, being really kind of cutesy with them and kind of coming across kind of almost like beta-ish in his behavior. The reason for that is because his value is so high that if he was to act detached, and if he was to act as the red pill tells you to, and as traditional dating coaches often tell you to, these women would actually, like, they would just think then that he's not interested in her because he's so much higher value than her. He's a movie star, he's famous, he's rich, he's attractive to be in that position. So he has to make her feel more comfortable with her, that to the point where she feels, okay, this guy is actually interested in me, right? And if he acted all aloof, she wouldn't be interested, right? So relative value is so important. This is why the nuance of dating is so important. Like, the way you actually respond and talk and communicate with one woman is going to be very different from how you then communicate with another based on that. And it's the same with Christian dating. And these, by the way, principles hold true whether you're dating a Christian or not. But applying those red pill traditional dating tactics with Christian women is also not going to work, because they tend to have higher self-worth, higher self-value. They're looking for different things. And that's why you have to have a really good strategy for communicating in a Christian way. What makes you attractive to Christian women? How does it make Christian women want to get to know you better and therefore want to marry you? This is really, really important. And if you're curious on how to do this as well, I do have a free guide called Christian Connections. It'll be in the description box on YouTube. It's on my Instagram bio, and it's also be under the Twitter, under the tweet on Twitter. If you want to download that and you really kind of figure out some of these ways to communicate and connect with Christian women, it's free. You don't lose anything. You just got to give me, give me your email, and you'll also receive 3 emails a week with me giving you value on how to find your future wife, essentially, which is the purpose of this, as I say. So to tie it all together, should you date single moms? It depends. Depends on her. Depends on you. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing saying you should and you have to as well. It really does depend on you, and you really want to be analyzing and taking each of these women on a kind of one-on-one basis. And is she someone that I want to spend my life with? Yes. Okay. Is she a single mom? Yes. Does the fact that she's a single mom therefore mean I don't want to spend the rest of my life with her? And it's how you answer that question which determines whether you continue. And again, probably depends on where you are in life, where you're at in your dating history, how old you are. All these things will also determine whether this is something you want to do. If you're a 26-year-old guy watching this and you've got a good job, you're in shape, life is good, looking good for you, your trajectory is good, you probably shouldn't date a single mother, to be quite honest with you. If you're a guy who's 38, who's pretty settled in life, but you're getting older and you're looking for some companionship, maybe you'd like to have a family, and she's a 32-year-old woman who's really great and has the caveat and the downside of having kids with another man, well, it's probably something you should still contemplate. So it all depends on you. But again, if she's a manipulative woman, then you shouldn't be contemplating her, full stop. The fact that she's a single mother actually is irrelevant to that. It's the fact that she's a manipulative woman who will potentially ruin your life. I don't know if anybody has any questions on this topic. I know there's a bunch of you watching, particularly on YouTube and in Twitter mainly. There's a couple of people on Instagram too. But does anybody have any questions about this, or shall I move on? All right, let's move on. So the final thing I want to talk about in this stream is how to vet a Christian woman. It's aligned. It's a lot of what I've been talking about already. What are the things you should be looking out for? What are the things that don't really matter? And the first thing to actually say, if you are a single guy looking to get married and you are thinking, how can I vet for my wife, but you're not getting consistent dates and you're not meeting women regularly, you're probably focused on the wrong thing, to be quite honest. You're probably overthinking it, whereby what really matters is getting those dates first. I never talk about what you should be looking for in a woman with my clients until they are getting dates with women. At that point, It's only when you're 3-4 dates in with a woman you should really be thinking about, okay, let's start this vetting process. Let's start figuring out if she's someone I want to spend more time with. The first couple of dates are really all come down to you not fucking it up, to be quite frank. You not messing it up, you not screwing it up with women, and figuring out whether you like her. That's basically it. Like if you're a guy who's single and you're sat at home and you want to get married and you last date you went on was 6 months ago, the last thing you need to be thinking about is how to vet women. What you really need to be thinking about is how can I get more dates with women? How can I present myself on those dates that make those women want to go on more dates with me? And how can I then build the initial attraction into something that will stay? And that's actually going to be your biggest limiting factor. It's not women. You can't control the women you meet. You can't control the women you date. All you can control is how many dates you get and how you put yourself forward on those dates. And then when you're doing that and you're getting those dates, then you can start thinking about vetting women. Then you can start thinking about who these women are and whether you want to move forward with them. Now, that said, there are 4 main things that you should be looking for when you are dating women and you are vetting and you are, in that situation. The first is, am I attracted to her? Forget about everything else. Am I attracted to this woman? Is she attractive? Is she sexually attractive to me? Is she someone that I would like to have intimate relations with when we're married? If yes, okay, great. We can move forward. If you're not attracted to her, move on. So again, it kind of comes back to the, being forced to date a single mum in certain Christian circles. No, it's a relationship that you have with this person. And if you're not attracted to her, like, you can't force that. You shouldn't make her live with that that kind of insecurity as well. That feeling of, my husband is not attracted to me. That's a very disgusting and kind of horrible thing to do to someone, actually. The second thing you should be looking out for is whether she is trustworthy. Is she a trustworthy person? Ultimately, this matters. Obviously, a relationship that doesn't have trust is a relationship that's not going anywhere. You've got to be able to trust your partner. And you've got to just figure out, is this person a trustworthy person? Basically, all red flags are pointing to that character trait. When people talk about red flags, and, there's value in that, value in red flags, but they are more of an online talking point. People kind of care about it and kind of click on it, and it gets engagement more so than it's something that's actually useful for your dating life, to be quite frank. But those red flags, they're all pointing back to whether or not someone is trustworthy. They're someone you want to spend your time with, and you can rely on them. They're not going to sell you out, and they're not going to be disloyal. They're not going to move on to someone else in the last minute. One of my clients recently dated a woman who was a Catholic. He's a Catholic as well. And she seemed great. She seemed like just kind of woman he was looking for. They got on really well. And, she painted Christian iconography, but there was something about her that I picked up on, which kind of made me question how much of her actual faith was authentic or not. And when it came down to it, she decided to walk out on, it wasn't too soon in, but 4 or 5 dates in. And it was basically because that she didn't have the right attitude towards a relationship. She didn't actually have a Christian or Catholic attitude towards relationships and marriage. She wanted just some, she was basically a feminist. She was basically a woman who was very successful in her career, said all the right things about religion and faith, and she painted like Catholic iconography and things like that. It seemed great on the surface, but when it came down to it, she didn't have a real Christian basis or Catholic basis for a relationship. And that meant as soon as things started to get a little bit serious, she walked. And those red flags were pointing at her untrustworthiness. She wasn't someone you could actually trust and rely on. The other thing that you're looking out for, and again is linked to this, is cognitive dissonance. Does she say one thing and do another? And this woman was a great display of that. She's a great example of that. So I'm going to use her again. You know, she painted Christian iconography. She went on pilgrimages to certain locations of saints and things like that. But then when it came down to paying on a date, she refused to let him pay and demanded that they split the bill. And it was you know, a lot of women will do that because it's kind of a culturally acceptable thing to do today, to offer like, hey, let's split the bill. You should always say, no, it's all right, I'll get it. And then if she demands and she kind of keeps, no, really, I really want to split the bill. Okay, you should probably acquiesce at that point. But generally, you don't the first time. You know, stick to your guns, say I'll pay. But this became a point of contention, and then there was stuff that came up about her career and her desires and how she wasn't willing to compromise on her career for potentially family in the future and things like that. And this showed that this is somebody who said one thing and did another. You know, she professed to have a great faith, and you know, a big part of the faith is to understand that, you know, women should get married. They should, at that point, take a secondary role within the relationship. They are an advisory role. Again, it's the man is the leader of the home. The husband is the leader of the home. The father is the leader of the family. But that means he listens and takes on board, and he's a servant leader, as Christ was. But ultimately, that is the position that the women do find themselves in marriage. But she was not willing to even compromise on her career to have a family, for example. And that is, you know, antithetical to a truly Christian belief of what is a relationship. What is marriage for? Marriage is for us, but a marriage is also to glorify God. And a big part of that glorification of God is to be fruitful and multiply and create a healthy dynamic for children to be raised in. That's a big part of what a marriage is. And she didn't believe that. So there's a cognitive dissonance there. And that points to someone who is unreliable. And the final thing you really should be looking for is, you know, do I enjoy spending time with this person? You're going to spend a lot of time with your wife. You should do. So if you don't enjoy spending time with her, it's going to be very difficult to have a good, healthy marriage. Marriage is one long conversation. So if you're not able to have good conversations and enjoy the conversations with her, then everything else is irrelevant. But really, and aligned values, of course. Again, this is less important for Christians. Generally, you will have aligned values when you're dating other Christians, whereas when I was a secular dating coach, this was much more important for those clients. For you guys, it will generally be something that kind of takes care of itself a little bit more. But again, you have to be careful with, again, this same example that I'm giving of someone who says one thing and does another. So it's really, really important to be aware of that as well, and always be looking below the surface. Who is this person really? It's not how they're presenting themselves. It's not the surface. You're always looking deeper at the character of the person you're dealing with. And this should go for everything. This should go for whether you want to hire a dating coach. Look for the character of that person. Are they someone who seems legit and seems like they really care and has a good knowledge of what they're doing? Or are they someone who seems like they're in it for a fast buck? Are they too marketing heavy? When they talk, do they have conviction behind them? Do they have a real care when you initially go on a call with them? Are they someone who seems like they actually care about your situation, is listening? Or are they someone who's just seeing how they can get money out of you? These things, you know, you should judge. And you should try and be as discerning as possible. And discernment is a really, really important thing. It's really, really important. And, you know, obviously I know I'm someone who can help you with these things. And if you are someone who feels like they want some help with getting married, and you're getting to a stage in your life where, you know, maybe you haven't dated for a while, maybe, you know, you just had a birthday and you feel like, man, I'm in the same place I am now a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Maybe you feel like kind of just lost in kind of all the different information online, you know, different perspectives telling you different things, and you just want some clarity and some guidance and just kind of to stop with the guesswork and just get this done so you can enjoy a relationship and then you can enjoy the fruits of a marriage sooner. If that's the case, please reach out, please DM me, send me a message, and we'll see whether it makes sense for you to join the Dynastic Dating Program. I have different versions of the program, so different price points for people who are willing to spend different amounts of money, invest different amounts of money in their life, and their dating life and their relationships, because ultimately that's what this is about. It's about finding you a marriage. It's about finding you a relationship. It's about putting you in the best position to put that foot forward. And if that's where you want to be, please comment, please reach out, please DM me. I see someone saying they have a question. Just, a general rule, if you have a question, just ask it. You don't have to tell people you have a question, but please fire away. And I'll keep this open until I've received it, and then I'll answer that, and then I'll close this live stream, because we are in the final points. And I also have a free guide if some of you guys want that, linked below this on Twitter, on this in the description box on YouTube, and in my bio on Instagram. So fire away for the guy who asked for a question, just so you guys can see what's the question. All right. Well, it doesn't seem like this question's coming, so I am gonna close the live stream here. I've said everything that I have to. Okay, here it is. So they say if you're wondering if a girl likes you, she probably doesn't, but I'll ask anyway. I've been on a couple of dates with a girl, but when I go to hug her, it's always awkward. Yeah, so I have a general rule where I don't give like full advice on situations like this based on, without actually having sat down and talked with the person. Basically, because if I don't have greater context, I can't give good advice like on these situations. And I've given bad advice in the past with clients because they've given me incomplete information. And, just on a question like this, I can't tell you exactly what's going on there. It could be a couple of things. It could be that she has some sexual shame. It's common with Christians. Could be that you're pushing it and forcing it in a situation where she's not comfortable with it. Could be, and there's a little bit more. When I try to kiss, she agrees, but it's very brief and awkward. That could be that you're pushing yourself on her and not respecting her boundaries. Could be that as well. Could be that she has different expectations for dating than you, and you guys aren't communicating it well. I can't say for sure without having, really being involved in the situation, unfortunately. But, if she's continuing to want to go on dates with you and want to spend time with you, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but it could be something that's creating some friction in this dynamic. So I would, if I were you, I would, get some proper, if this is a situation that's really weighing on your mind, I would I would invest in really getting some good advice, some one-on-one advice, sitting down, having a one-on-one call with me or someone else, and really talking this stuff out, because that's when you're going to really find out and kind of, I can dig into what's really happening there. And whether you have, some things that are causing that as well, because this could be a problem of wanting to force things. And a big problem I see in my clients is when guys really want to rush the process. They want to skip to the finish line. They want to get the kiss because that gives them kind of the tick that this is a good date, which is an underlying problem for attitude towards dating. And it's something that needs to be resolved, because you will always be pushing people when they're not ready to be pushed, and it all becomes about you, not them. But I could be wrong, right? I don't know you, unfortunately, LMA. I don't know you. I don't know this situation. So it could be very different. I could be completely wrong. Could be that she's just dealing with some sexual shame and that actually she enjoys it, but she's just not very good at expressing that. Now, that would also be something you have to work through with her that will cause challenges within the relationship as well. And that's a difficult thing to overcome. So it really, really does depend. But thank you for the question. I appreciate you putting that in here because it gives me, again, something to really feed off and to provide more value to other people who may be dealing with a similar situation. So really appreciate the question. And yeah, if anybody else has a question, please feel free to drop it in. These are for you as much as anything. I want to help you guys out as the best you can. But if nobody else does, we will close it there. I just want to say thank you for joining me this Thursday evening. If you're in the United States, it's Friday morning for me. Really appreciate you giving this time and spending this time with me. It's something that I do value and I don't look upon kind of lightly. You know, it's something that is very, you know, it's an investment of your energy to be here with me. So I thank you for spending that time with me, and I hope you will have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend when it comes around. God bless, and I'll see you very soon.